You weren't born afraid of people. That fear, the kind that makes your heart race in a crowd, that silences your voice in conversation, it was planted. But you're not a prisoner. You can unlearn it. You can step into any room and own it. Confidence isn't magic. It's a skill. And today, you begin mastering it, not someday. Not when you're ready, now. Subscribe to our channel if you're ready to master your mind, and tell us, where are you watching from? Listen to me. You didn't come into this world worried about what strangers thought of your laugh. You didn't emerge from your mother's womb checking if your voice was too loud or too quiet. As a child, you spoke without permission. You asked questions without apology. You existed without explanation. What happened to that fearless child? Society happened, school happened, criticism happened. Somewhere along the way, someone told you to be quiet. Someone made you feel small. Someone laughed when you should have been encouraged. And piece by piece, you learned to shrink. But here's what most people don't understand about social anxiety. It's not a life sentence. It's a learned behavior. And anything learned can be unlearned. Your brain is not your enemy. It's trying to protect you. When you feel that familiar tightness in your chest before speaking up, your mind is running an ancient program designed to keep you safe from social rejection. Thousands of years ago, being cast out from the tribe meant death. Your anxiety isn't weakness. It's a survival mechanism that's outlived its usefulness. The problem is this: your brain can't tell the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a boardroom full of colleagues. It responds to both with the same emergency alarm: fight, flight, or freeze. And you've been choosing freeze for so long that you've forgotten. You have other options. Here's your first truth. Confidence is not the absence of fear. Confidence is feeling the fear and acting anyway. Every person you admire, every leader you respect, every speaker who commands attention, they all feel the same butterflies you do. The difference is what they do next. You think confident people never doubt themselves? Wrong. They doubt themselves constantly. But they've learned something you haven't yet discovered. Action cures anxiety. Movement dissolves fear. The moment you stop running from discomfort and start moving toward it, everything changes. Let me ask you this. What's the worst thing that could happen if you spoke up in that meeting? Really. Strip away the imagined catastrophe and look at the facts. Someone might disagree with you. Someone might not laugh at your joke. Someone might ignore your comment entirely. And then what? Life goes on. The world keeps spinning. You're still breathing. You're still valuable. You're still worthy of respect and connection. But let me ask you something else. What's the worst thing that happens if you stay silent? You disappear. Your ideas die with you. Your voice becomes a whisper, then nothing at all. You become a spectator in your own life, watching others live the boldness you dream about. That ends today. You are not broken. You are not defective. You are not hopeless. You are simply practiced in the wrong behaviors. And practice, my friend, works both ways. You've practiced anxiety until you've become excellent at it. Now it's time to practice courage. Every social situation is not a judgment. It's an opportunity. Every conversation is not a test. It's a chance to connect. Every room you enter is not a courtroom. It's a stage where you get to choose your role. Stop auditioning for other people's approval. Start performing for your own growth. The child who spoke without fear is still inside you, buried perhaps, but not dead. It's time to dig that child up, dust them off, and let them speak again. Because the world needs what you have to say, and you've been quiet long enough. The more you avoid, the stronger it grows. Silence doesn't protect you, it imprisons you. Start speaking, start breaking free. Your fear feeds on silence like fire feeds on oxygen. Every time you bite your tongue when you want to speak, every time you avoid eye contact when you want to connect, every time you choose the safe path when you know the bold one awaits, you're not protecting yourself. You're feeding the monster, and that monster's getting stronger. Here's what happens in the quiet spaces of avoidance. Your mind creates stories, elaborate, devastating stories about what would happen if you dared to be seen. Your imagination becomes a horror movie director, casting you as the victim in scenarios that will never happen. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. Avoidance is not safety. It's slow suicide. Every social situation you dodge becomes proof to your brain that you are right to be afraid. Your mind keeps a ledger, and every time you retreat, it marks down another tally in the danger column. Eventually, the simple act of existing around other people feels like a threat. You think you're being careful. You think you're being smart. You think you're waiting for the right moment, the perfect words, the ideal circumstances. But perfection is the enemy of progress. And while you wait for perfect, life passes you by. I've seen it 1,000 times. People who start by avoiding small conversations end up avoiding big opportunities. People who can't speak up in casual settings can't advocate for themselves when it matters most. People who practice silence become masters of invisibility. But let me ask you this. What has silence ever won you? What promotion came from staying quiet? What relationship bloomed from avoiding connection? What dream materialized from playing it safe? Nothing. Silence wins you nothing. Here's what most people don't understand about courage. It's not a feeling. It's an action. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the judgment that something else is more important than fear. And right now, your growth is more important than your comfort. The cure for social anxiety is social action, not thinking about social action, not preparing for social action, not waiting for the anxiety to disappear before taking social action. Just action. Raw, imperfect, immediate action. Start small. Speak up in a low-stakes situation. Make eye contact with a stranger. Ask a question you normally wouldn't ask. Say hello when you'd usually look away. These aren't grand gestures. They're tiny acts of rebellion against the tyranny of fear. But here's what happens when you break the silence. You collect evidence. Evidence that you can handle discomfort. Evidence that most people are decent. Evidence that your worst-case scenarios rarely come true. Evidence that you're stronger than you think. Every time you speak when fear tells you to be quiet, you're rewiring your brain. You're teaching it a new story. You're proving that you can survive and even thrive in the very situations that used to terrify you. The paradox of social confidence is this. You don't gain confidence by feeling confident. You gain confidence by acting confident despite feeling afraid. Confidence is the byproduct of courageous action, not the prerequisite for it. Your voice matters. Your thoughts have value. Your presence makes a difference. But none of that means anything if you keep it locked inside. The world cannot benefit from your silence. The world needs your contribution. Stop being a secret. Stop hiding your light under the basket of anxiety. Stop treating your voice like it's dangerous when it might be exactly what someone needs to hear. Here's your assignment, and it starts today. Find one moment, just one, where you would normally stay quiet, and speak instead. Not perfectly, not eloquently, just honestly. Watch what happens. Watch how the world doesn't end. Watch how people respond with more grace than you expected. Watch how your fear shrinks when you face it head on. Silence is not golden. Silence is surrender, and you were not born to surrender. I'm awkward. I don't belong. They'll laugh at me. False. This chapter tears down the mental lies that keep you stuck. You are not the narrator you think you are. That voice in your head, the one that whispers poison about your worth, that predicts disaster in every social encounter, that tells you you're different in all the wrong ways, that voice is a liar, and you've been believing its lies for far too long. Let's examine the stories you tell yourself. Really examine them. Strip away the emotion and look at the facts. When you say, I'm awkward, what does that actually mean? That you paused before speaking? That you stumbled over a word? That you felt nervous in a group? Congratulations, you're human. Here's what you call awkward. The rest of the world calls normal. Every person you admire has had moments of uncertainty. Every confident person you know has said something they immediately regretted. Every social butterfly you envy has walked into rooms where they felt out of place. The difference between you and them is not that they never feel awkward. The difference is that they don't let feeling awkward define them. You think you don't belong? Based on what evidence? Because you don't look like everyone else? Because you don't share every interest? Because you think differently? That's not proof you don't belong. That's proof you have something unique to offer. Belonging is not about fitting in. Belonging is about adding value. And you cannot add value by being a carbon copy of everyone else. You add value by being authentically, unapologetically yourself. But let me ask you this. Where did you learn that being different was dangerous? Who taught you that standing out was something to fear? When did you decide that your uniqueness was a liability instead of an asset? Society rewards conformity with comfort, but it rewards authenticity with connection. The people who matter, the relationships that last, the experiences that fulfill, they all come from showing up as yourself, not as who you think others want you to be. They'll laugh at me. This is perhaps the most devastating lie of all, because even if they do laugh, so what? Laughter is not death. Judgment is not fatal. Disapproval is not destruction. You've given other people's opinions more power over your life than your own dreams. You've made their potential laughter louder than your own voice. You've made their possible rejection more important than your definite growth. Here's what happens. When people laugh at you, absolutely nothing changes about who you are. Your value doesn't decrease. Your worth doesn't diminish. Your potential doesn't shrink. You remain exactly as capable, exactly as deserving, exactly as valuable as you were before. The only thing that changes is your relationship with other people's opinions. And that, my friend, is exactly what needs to change. Most of the time, people aren't laughing at you anyway. They're thinking about themselves. They're worried about their own performance, their own appearance, their own fears. You think you're the center of attention, but you're barely a blip on their radar. This is not an insult. This is freedom. Freedom from the exhausting burden of believing everyone is watching, waiting for you to make a mistake. Freedom from the paralyzing fear of being perfectly judged by imperfect people. Your inner critic is not your protector. It's your jailer. It doesn't keep you safe. It keeps you small. It doesn't prevent failure. It prevents trying. It doesn't spare you from judgment. It spares you from living. Time to fire that critic. Time to hire a new voice. A voice that speaks truth instead of fear. A voice that encourages instead of condemns. A voice that sees possibility instead of problems. You are not awkward. You are learning. You are not out of place. You are exploring. You are not laughable. You are human, and that is enough. You are enough. Right now, exactly as you are enough. Your self-talk is either a weapon or a wound. Learn to speak to yourself like someone worth leading. Because you are. The most important conversation you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. It's happening right now. It happens every moment of every day, and for most people, it's the most toxic relationship they'll ever endure. You wouldn't let a stranger speak to you the way you speak to yourself. You wouldn't tolerate from a friend the cruelty you inflict on your own mind. You wouldn't accept from an enemy the constant criticism you deliver to your own soul. So, why do you accept it from yourself? Your inner voice shapes your outer world. The way you speak to yourself determines how you show up in every room, every conversation, every opportunity. If your internal dialogue is filled with doubt, your external presence will radiate uncertainty. If your self-talk is poison, your confidence will be toxic. But here's what most people don't understand. You can change the conversation. You can retrain that voice. You can transform your inner critic into an inner coach. Listen to how you talk to yourself before a social situation. I'm going to embarrass myself. I never know what to say. Everyone will think I'm boring. I shouldn't. Even try. Now imagine speaking to a child that way. Imagine crushing a young person's spirit with that kind of relentless negativity. You would never do it. Because you know words have power. Because you know encouragement builds strength, while criticism breaks it down. You were once that child, and part of you still is. Your brain believes what you tell it most often. If you constantly tell it you're socially incompetent, it will find evidence to support that belief. If you repeatedly tell it you're awkward, it will make you act awkwardly. To maintain consistency with your self-image, but the reverse is also true. Tell your brain you're learning to be confident, and it will look for proof of your progress. Tell yourself you're getting better at connecting with people, and you'll notice moments of genuine connection. Tell yourself you have something valuable to offer, and you'll find opportunities to contribute. This isn't positive thinking fairy dust. This is cognitive science. Your reticular activating system, the part of your brain that filters information, shows you more of whatever you're focused on. Focus on your failures, and you'll see more evidence of failure. Focus on your growth, and you'll notice more evidence of improvement. Start treating yourself like someone you're responsible for helping, because you are. Start speaking to yourself like someone whose success you care about, because you should. Start encouraging yourself like someone whose happiness matters to you, because it does. Before you walk into a challenging social situation, change the script. Instead of, "I hope I don't mess this up," try, "I'm ready to learn something new." Instead of, "I'm terrible at this," try, "I'm getting better at this." Instead of, "They won't like me," try, "I'm going to focus on liking them." The difference is not just semantic, it's neurological. Different words create different emotions. Different emotions create different actions. Different actions create different results. Your inner voice should be your champion, not your executioner. It should build you up, not tear you down. It should prepare you for success, not rehearse you for failure. But let me ask you this. If you don't believe in yourself, why should anyone else? If you don't speak to yourself with respect, why should others treat you with respect? If you don't see your own value, how can you expect others to recognize it? The relationship you have with yourself sets the standard for every other relationship. In your life, people will treat you approximately how you treat yourself. They will believe in you about as much as you believe in yourself. They will respect you roughly to the degree that you respect yourself. Change the conversation, fire the critic, hire the coach. Because the voice in your head should be the voice of someone who wants you to win. You don't need a mask to be liked. You need to be real. Connection begins when performance ends. You're exhausted. Exhausted from the constant acting. Exhausted from monitoring every word, every gesture, every expression for signs of approval or disapproval. Exhausted from trying to be the person you think others want you to be instead of the person you actually are. The performance is killing you, and it's not even working. Here's the cruel irony of trying to impress people. The harder you try, the less impressive you become. The more desperately you seek approval, the less worthy of approval you appear. The more you perform for others, the less authentic connection you create. People don't connect with your performance. They connect with your humanity. They don't remember your polished answers. They remember moments of genuine vulnerability. They don't fall in love with your mask. They fall in love with the person behind it. But you've been wearing that mask so long, you've forgotten what your real face looks like. When you walk into a room, your first instinct is to scan for what people want to see, then become that. If they seem serious, you suppress your humor. If they seem intellectual, you reach for big words. If they seem casual, you dim your intensity. You're like a chameleon, constantly changing colors to blend in. But here's what you don't realize. People can sense the performance. They can feel the inauthenticity. They may not be able to name it, but something feels off. Something feels forced. And that something creates distance instead of connection. The most magnetic people you know aren't the ones trying hardest to be liked. They're the ones being most genuinely themselves. They have opinions that might not be popular. They show emotions that might not be convenient. They admit flaws that might not be flattering. And paradoxically, people are drawn to them. Authenticity is attractive. Vulnerability is magnetic. Realness creates connection in ways that perfection never can. But let me ask you this. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you in your private moments, when the performance ends and the real you emerges. That person, the one without the mask, that's who people need to meet. Stop trying to be interesting. Start being interested. Stop trying to impress others with what you know. Start impressing yourself with what you can learn. Stop performing your value. Start living it. The greatest gift you can give another person is your authentic attention, not your clever commentary, not your impressive stories, not your perfect responses. Your presence, your genuine interest in who they are and what they have to say. When you stop trying to be impressive, you become approachable. When you stop performing, you start connecting. When you drop the act, people drop their guard. Here's what happens when you show up as yourself. Some people won't like you, and that's perfect, because the people who don't like the real you weren't meant to be in your life anyway. But the people who do connect with your authenticity will form relationships with you that run deeper than any performance could create. You think being yourself is risky, but being fake is riskier. Because even if people like your performance, they don't like you. They like the character you're playing. And you can't play a character forever without losing yourself in the process. The mask is heavy. The performance is exhausting. The constant code switching is draining your energy and suffocating your spirit. Take off the mask. End the performance. Stop trying to be what you think others want and start being what you actually are. Because what you actually are is enough. What you actually are is valuable. What you actually are is worthy of love and respect and connection, but only if you're brave enough to let people see it. Forget trying to be interesting. Be interested. Be here. Presence is what people feel and remember. You've been approaching conversations all wrong. You walk into every interaction with a mental script, rehearsing what you'll say, how you'll say it, what impression you'll make. You're so busy planning your performance that you miss the entire show happening right in front of you. The person across from you is trying to tell you something, not just with their words, but with their posture, their tone, their eyes. They're revealing who they are, what they care about, what they fear, what they hope for, and you're missing it because you're too busy preparing your next line. Presence is not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being the most attentive. It's not about having the best stories. It's about caring about theirs. It's not about being fascinating. It's about being fascinated. When you truly listen, not with your ears only, but with your entire being, something magical happens. The other person feels seen, they feel heard, they feel valued, and in return, they see you, hear you, value you. But here's what most people don't understand about listening. It's not passive. It's not waiting for your turn to talk. It's not nodding politely while planning your response. Real listening is active. It's engaged. It's generous. Real listening means asking questions that show you care about the answers. It means remembering details from previous conversations. It means noticing not just what people say, but how they say it. It means being curious about their thoughts, their experiences, their perspectives. You think charisma is about being charming, but charisma is about making others feel charming. You think influence is about being impressive, but influence is about making others feel impressive. You think connection is about being interesting, but connection is about being interested. Most confident people in any room are not the ones talking the most. They're the ones listening the most intentionally. They're present. They're here. They're with you, not just near you. But let me ask you this. When was the last time you had a conversation where you weren't thinking about what to say next? When was the last time you were so engaged with someone else's story that you forgot? To worry about your own performance? That's presence. That's the state where real connection happens. That's where social anxiety dissolves because you're no longer focused on yourself. Here's the secret. Anxiety is self-focused. Confidence is other-focused. When you're worried about how you look, how you sound, how you're being perceived, you're trapped in your own head. But when you're genuinely curious about the person in front of you, when you're fully engaged with their thoughts and feelings, there's no room left for self-consciousness. Presence is a choice you make in every moment of every conversation. You can choose to be mentally rehearsing your next comment, or you can choose to be fully engaged with what's happening right now. You can choose to be performing for approval, or you can choose to be connecting for real. Stop trying to be the star of every conversation. Start being the director, the one who draws out the best in others, who creates space for them to shine, who makes them feel like the most important person in the room. Because here's what happens when you master presence. People remember how you made them feel. They remember that you listened. They remember that you cared. They remember that in a world full of people trying to be heard, you chose to hear them, and they'll seek you out again. Not because you impressed them with your wit or your wisdom, but because you gave them something far more valuable, your complete attention. Be here, be now, be present. Everything else will follow. You think everyone's watching. They're not. This chapter shows you how to shrink that spotlight and reclaim your ease. You walk into a room and immediately feel it, the spotlight, hot, bright, unforgiving. Every eye seems trained on you. Every person seems to be cataloging your flaws. Every conversation seems to pause as you pass. You feel exposed, examined, judged. But here's the reality that will set you free. That spotlight exists only in your mind. The spotlight effect is your brain's cruel trick. It convinces you that you're the center of attention when you're barely registering on anyone's radar. It makes you believe that people notice every stumble, every awkward pause, every imperfect moment, when the truth is they're far too busy worrying about their own performance to scrutinize yours. Think about your last social gathering. How much time did you spend analyzing other people's clothes, their conversations, their minor mistakes? Probably very little. You were too focused on yourself, your appearance, your words, your comfort level. Everyone else was doing exactly the same thing. This is the great paradox of social anxiety. You think everyone is watching you, but everyone is actually watching themselves. You think you're under the microscope, but you're just another face in the crowd. You think your mistakes are magnified, but they're barely noticed. But let me ask you this. When someone else trips slightly or mispronounces a word or has an awkward moment, how long do you think about it? A few seconds? Maybe a minute? Then it's gone, forgotten, irrelevant. You move on with your life because you have your own concerns, your own thoughts, your own world to navigate. That's exactly how others respond to your imperfections. They notice for a moment, then they move on, because they have their own spotlights to worry about. The spotlight effect doesn't just make you feel watched, it makes you act watched. You become stiff, rehearsed, overly careful. You monitor every word, every gesture, every expression. You become a performer instead of a person. And ironically, this artificial behavior is more noticeable than any natural mistake would have been. Here's how to shrink that imaginary spotlight. Focus outward instead of inward. When you walk into a room, instead of wondering what people think of you, start wondering what you think of them. Instead of worrying about being judged, start noticing the interesting details around you. Instead of performing, start observing the moment. You shift your attention from yourself to your surroundings. The spotlight begins to dim. The moment you become curious about others instead of self-conscious about yourself, the heat of imagined scrutiny begins to cool. But here's what most people don't realize. Even if people were watching you as intensely as you imagine, so what? Even if they were paying as much attention to your every move as you fear, what's the worst that could happen? They might have a thought about you, they might form an opinion, they might make a judgment, and then what? Life continues. The earth keeps spinning. Your value remains unchanged. Their thoughts about you have no power over your reality unless you give them that power. Most people are not thinking about you at all. They're thinking about themselves, their own appearance, their own performance, their own fears and hopes and dreams. You're not the star of their mental movie. You're barely a background character. This isn't meant to diminish you. This is meant to free you. Free you from the exhausting burden of believing everyone is watching. Free you from the paralyzing fear of being perfectly scrutinized by imperfect people. Step out of that imaginary spotlight. It was never real anyway. Anxiety isn't weakness. It's untapped energy. You'll learn how to turn fear into fuel. On command. Your heart is racing. Your palms are sweating. Your mind is spinning with worst-case scenarios. You call this anxiety. You label it weakness. You treat it like an enemy to be defeated. You're wrong on all counts. What you're feeling isn't weakness. It's power. Raw, untapped, misdirected power. Your body is flooding you with energy, preparing you for action, giving you every tool you need to perform at your peak. The problem isn't the energy. The problem is what you're doing with it. Anxiety and excitement are physiologically identical. Same racing heart, same heightened awareness, same surge of adrenaline. The only difference is the story you tell yourself about what's happening. Change the story and you change the experience. Instead of "I'm anxious," try "I'm energized." Instead of "I'm nervous," try "I'm alert." Instead of "I'm scared," try "I'm ready." The sensations remain the same, but their meaning transforms completely. This isn't positive thinking nonsense. This is biochemical reality. Adrenaline doesn't know if you're about to give a presentation or run from a predator. It just knows you need to be at your best. It sharpens your focus, quickens your reflexes, heightens your awareness. It's performance enhancement delivered by your own biology. But here's what happens when you fight the energy. You create tension. You resist what your body is trying to give you. You turn helpful arousal into helpless anxiety. You transform fuel into friction. The secret is not to eliminate the nervousness, it's to redirect it. Don't try to calm down, channel up. Don't suppress the energy. Harness it. Before your next challenging social situation, change your relationship with the physical sensations. Feel that racing heart and think, my body is preparing me for success. Notice those butterflies and think, my system is coming. Online. Recognize that heightened awareness and think, I'm entering peak performance mode. Athletes know this secret. Performers understand this truth. Before every game, every show, every competition, they feel the same surge of energy you feel before social challenges. The difference is they've learned to interpret those sensations as readiness, not weakness. But let me ask you this. What if your nervousness is actually your body's way of telling you that what you're about to do matters? What if the intensity of your anxiety is proportional to the importance of the opportunity? What if feeling nervous is a sign that you're about to do something meaningful? Your nervous system doesn't activate for trivial events. It saves its energy for moments that matter. If you're feeling anxious about a social situation, it's because part of you recognizes the potential significance of what's about to happen. Use that energy. Let it sharpen your focus instead of scattering your thoughts. Let it quicken your responses instead of paralyzing your actions. Let it heighten your awareness instead of overwhelming your senses. The next time you feel that familiar surge before a social interaction, don't wish it away. Welcome it. Thank your body for preparing you. Appreciate the extra fuel it's providing. Then direct that energy toward connection instead of protection, toward engagement instead of escape. Here's the truth. Some of the most confident people you know still feel nervous before important social situations. The difference is they've learned to interpret those nerves as excitement, as readiness, as their body's way of saying, this matters, so let's bring our best. Your anxiety isn't a bug in your system. It's a feature. It's proof that you care, that you're engaged, that you're alive. Don't medicate it away or wish it gone. Transform it into the very energy that powers your social confidence. The fuel is already there. You just need to learn how to drive. It stings, but it doesn't define you. In this chapter, you'll learn to take rejection without letting it take you down. You've built your entire social strategy around avoiding rejection. You don't speak up because someone might dismiss your idea. You don't introduce yourself because someone might not be interested. You don't share your thoughts because someone might disagree. You don't reach out because someone might not respond. You've made rejection your master, and it's keeping you prisoner. But here's what you need to understand about rejection. It's information, not condemnation. It's feedback, not failure. It's redirection, not destruction. When someone says no to you, they're not saying you're worthless. They're saying you're not the right fit for this particular moment, this specific need, this individual preference, and that's perfectly fine. Rejection is not personal, even when it feels personal. When someone doesn't laugh at your joke, they're not rejecting your sense of humor. They might be having a bad day. When someone doesn't engage in conversation, they're not rejecting your worth. They might be preoccupied with their own problems. When someone doesn't seem interested in what you have to say, they're not rejecting your intelligence. They might simply have different interests. But let me ask you this. What's the alternative to risking rejection? Guaranteed invisibility, certain irrelevance, definite disconnection. You can protect yourself from the possibility of being turned down by never putting yourself out there. But the cost of that protection is everything you actually want. Every meaningful relationship in your life began with someone risking rejection. Every opportunity you've received came from someone being willing to face potential dismissal. Every moment of genuine connection happened because someone chose courage over comfort. The people you most admire have been rejected more times than you've even tried. They've heard more no's than you've asked questions. They've faced more dismissal than you've risked encounters. The difference between them and you is not that they never get rejected. It's that rejection doesn't stop them. Here's the truth about rejection that will set you free. It's temporary. That sting you feel when someone says no, when someone looks away, when someone doesn't respond the way you hoped, it's real, but it's brief. The pain of rejection lasts minutes. The regret of not trying lasts forever. But here's what happens. When you start treating rejection as information instead of injury, you begin to learn. You discover that most people are kind even when they're not interested. You realize that being turned down doesn't hurt as much as you imagined. You understand that one person's no doesn't predict everyone else's response. Start seeking rejection, not because you want to be dismissed, but because you want to build immunity to the fear of it. Make requests you're not sure will be granted. Start conversations you're not certain will be welcomed. Share ideas you're not positive will be received. Well, watch what happens. Watch how often you're surprised by positive responses. Watch how manageable the actual experience of rejection is compared to your fear of it. Watch how each no makes the next attempt easier. Rejection is not the opposite of acceptance. It's the pathway to it. Every no gets you closer to yes. Every dismissal teaches you something valuable. Every moment of not fitting here helps you find where you do belong. You cannot be everyone's cup of tea, and thank goodness for that. The world needs diversity of thought, variety of personality, range of perspective. If everyone liked you, you wouldn't be interesting. You'd be invisible. Stop trying to avoid rejection. Start collecting it. Each one is proof that you're putting yourself out there, taking chances, living boldly. Each one is evidence that you're choosing growth over safety, connection over comfort. Rejection stings, but regret burns. Choose the sting. Eyes reveal power. Avoidance reveals fear. Learn to hold your gaze, and with it, your ground. You look everywhere except where you should. At the floor when you're walking. At your phone when you're waiting. At the wall when you're talking. Anywhere but into the eyes of the person in front of you. You think you're being polite. You think you're avoiding confrontation. You think you're staying safe. But what you're actually doing is broadcasting insecurity to everyone around you. Eye contact is the handshake of the soul. It's how humans connect, how trust is built, how respect is earned and given. When you avoid someone's gaze, you're not just missing an opportunity for connection. You're actively creating distance. Your eyes tell a story before you speak a word. They communicate confidence or uncertainty, interest or indifference, presence or absence. When you look directly at someone, you're saying, I'm here, I'm engaged, I value this moment and this conversation. When you look away, you're saying the opposite. But here's what most people don't understand about eye contact. It's not aggressive unless you make it aggressive. It's not intimidating unless you're trying to intimidate. Natural, genuine eye contact is simply human connection at its most basic level. You've made eye contact into something dangerous, something to be feared and avoided. But eye contact is actually safety. It's honesty. It's the foundation of every meaningful interaction you'll ever have. When you look someone in the eyes, you see them as a real person, not a threat to be avoided. When they look back, they see you as confident and present, not nervous and distracted. The conversation that follows is more genuine, more connected, more memorable. But let me ask you this. What are you afraid will happen if you make eye contact? That someone will see your nervousness? They already sense it from your avoidance. That someone will judge you? They're already forming opinions based on your behavior. That someone will reject you? Looking away won't prevent that eye contact. It doesn't create problems, it reveals solutions. When you look at someone directly, you can read their actual response instead of imagining their thoughts. You can see if they're interested or distracted, engaged or preoccupied, friendly or rushed. You get real information instead of anxious. Speculation. Start small. Make brief eye contact with cashiers, servers, people you pass on the street. Notice how natural it feels once you practice. Notice how people respond more warmly when you acknowledge them with your gaze. Notice how much more present you feel when you're actually looking at the world around you. In conversations, aim for natural eye contact, not a staring contest, not constant gawking, but regular, comfortable connection. Look at them when they're speaking to show you're listening. Look at them when you're speaking to show you're present. Look away occasionally to process thoughts. Then return your gaze to maintain connection. Here's what happens when you master eye contact. People trust you more quickly. They feel more connected to you. They remember you more clearly. They take you more seriously. They see you as more confident, more honest, more engaging. Your eyes are not a vulnerability to be hidden. They're a strength to be shared. They're your most powerful tool for creating connection, building trust, and demonstrating confidence. Stop looking for reasons to look away. Start looking for opportunities to connect. Stop making excuses for avoiding eye contact. Start making the choice to be fully present. The world is happening at eye level. Look up, look out. Look directly at the people you're speaking with, because when you do, they'll finally see the real you. And that's exactly what they've been waiting for. Waiting to be included is a losing game. Speak first. Set the tone. Own the room with your voice. You're waiting for permission that will never come. Waiting for the perfect moment that doesn't exist. Waiting for someone else to break the silence, start the conversation, create the opening you think you need. While you wait, life passes. You buy. The people who shape conversations don't wait for invitations. They create them. The people who lead discussions don't wait for openings. They make them. The people who influence outcomes don't wait for perfect moments. They act in imperfect ones. Speaking first is not about being loud or dominating. It's about being willing. Willing to take the risk of going first. Willing to break the ice when everyone else is comfortable with the cold. Willing to say what needs to be said when everyone else is thinking it but staying silent. But here's what you don't realize about speaking first. It's a service to others. When you break the silence in an uncomfortable moment, you're not being selfish. You're being generous. You're giving everyone else permission to relax, to engage, to be human. Think about the last time you were in a group where no one was talking. Everyone was waiting, hoping someone else would start. The tension was building. The awkwardness was growing. Then one person spoke up, and suddenly everyone could breathe again. That person didn't just start a conversation. They provided relief. You could be that person. You should be that person. Speaking first doesn't mean you have to be brilliant. It doesn't mean you need the perfect opener or the most insightful comment. It just means you're willing to be human in a moment when everyone else is being hesitant. How is everyone doing today? This weather is incredible, isn't it? I love what they've done with this space. Simple, human, real. These aren't genius conversation starters. They're invitations for others to join in, to feel included, to participate. But let me ask you this. What's the worst thing that could happen if you speak first? Someone might not respond enthusiastically. Someone might give a brief answer. Someone might seem uninterested. And then what? The world continues. You're still valuable. The next person might be thrilled that you broke the ice. The fear of speaking first is really the fear of being responsible for the conversation's success or failure. But here's the truth. You're not responsible for other people's responses. You're only responsible for your own contribution. You can't control whether someone engages, but you can control whether you offer them the opportunity. When you speak first, you set the tone. If you're warm, others feel permission to be warm. If you're genuine, others feel permission to be genuine. If you're interested in connection, others feel invited to connect. The energy you bring to the beginning of a conversation influences everything that follows. Speak with confidence, and others respond with confidence. Speak with openness, and others open up. Speak with enthusiasm, and others become more enthusiastic. Stop waiting for the perfect moment to contribute. Start creating moments worth contributing to. Stop hoping someone else will break the silence. Start being the person who makes silence unnecessary. Your voice matters. Your thoughts have value. Your willingness to go first makes a difference. In every room you enter, the conversation is waiting for you to begin it. The group is waiting for you to unite it. The moment is waiting for you to seize it. Speak first. Speak now. Speak boldly, because the world needs what you have to say more than you need to wait for permission to say it. Large crowds, high stakes, shrink it. One face, one moment, one breath. That's all you need to stay grounded. The room feels enormous. Hundreds of eyes, dozens of conversations, endless opportunities to feel overwhelmed and insignificant. You scan the crowd, and your anxiety spikes. Too many people, too much noise, too much possibility for things to go wrong. But here's the secret that will transform your experience. You don't have to engage with the entire room. You only have to engage with one person at a time. Big rooms are just collections of individual conversations. Large crowds are just groups of individual people. High-stakes situations are just moments happening between human beings. When you try to handle it all at once, you get overwhelmed. When you shrink your focus to one interaction at a time, everything becomes manageable. Find one face in the crowd. Make eye contact with one person. Have one genuine moment of connection. That's it. That's your entire job. Not to impress everyone, not to work the room like a politician, not to be the life of every conversation. Just one real moment with one real person. Then move to the next face, the next moment, the next connection. You think successful people at large gatherings have some special ability to handle crowds. They don't. They have the wisdom to treat every crowd as a series of individual interactions. They don't try to connect with everyone at once. They connect with one person at a time, fully and genuinely. But here's what happens when you shrink the room. The pressure disappears. When you're focused on one person, you can't be overwhelmed by everyone else. When you're present in one conversation, you're not anxious about all the other conversations you're not having. When you're engaged with one human being, the crowd becomes irrelevant. Start with the person nearest to you, or the person who looks most approachable, or the person standing alone who might welcome some company. It doesn't matter who. What matters is that you choose one and give them your complete attention. Pretend the rest of the room doesn't exist. For the length of that conversation, it's just you and them. Ask them a question. Listen to their answer. Respond genuinely. Be present. Be human. When that conversation naturally ends, find another face. Repeat the process. One person, one moment, one breath. Large rooms only feel overwhelming when you try to process them as one massive entity. But they're not one massive entity. They're collections of individual people, each with their own stories, their own interests, their own desire for genuine connection. You don't need to be fascinating to everyone. You just need to be interested in someone. You don't need to impress the entire room. You just need to connect with one person at a time. But let me ask you this. What if that one conversation you have is exactly what that person needed? What if your willingness to engage with them in a crowded room makes them feel seen and valued? What if your genuine interest in their thoughts creates a moment of real connection in an otherwise superficial gathering? Those moments matter, not just to you, but to them. Every person in that crowded room is hoping for genuine connection. Most of them are feeling just as uncertain as you are. When you choose to engage authentically with one person, you're giving them a gift. Shrink the room by expanding your presence. Focus intensely on the person in front of you. Let the crowd fade into background noise. Make that conversation the only thing that matters in that moment. One face, one voice, one human being. That's all you need to handle any room, any crowd, any situation. The room is only as big as you make it. You don't get self-worth from applause. You build it from within. Learn how to detach from opinions and stand tall alone. Your self-worth has been held hostage by other people's opinions for far too long. You feel valuable when someone compliments you and worthless when someone criticizes you. You're confident when people approve and devastated when they don't. You've made strangers the judges of your value. This is not strength, this is slavery. True. Self-worth doesn't fluctuate with feedback. It doesn't rise and fall with applause. It doesn't depend on approval or crumble with criticism. True self-worth is unshakable because it comes from within, not from without. But here's what most people don't understand about building genuine self-worth. It's not about convincing yourself you're perfect. It's about accepting yourself as human. It's not about believing you never make mistakes. It's about knowing that mistakes don't define your value. You are not your performance. You are not your achievements. You are not your failures. You are not other people's opinions of you. You are a human being with inherent worth that exists independent of external validation. Your value was established at birth. Nothing you do can increase it. Nothing you fail to do can diminish it. You don't earn worth through accomplishment. You don't lose worth through mistake. You simply have it, permanently and unconditionally. But society has taught you the opposite. Society has taught you that your value depends on your productivity, your achievements, your ability to impress others. Society has taught you to seek worth in all the wrong places, in grades, in jobs, in relationships, in the fleeting approval of people who don't even know you. You've been looking for worth in temporary places, then wondering why you feel so insecure. Real self-worth comes from self-respect. And self-respect comes from living according to your values, not other people's expectations. It comes from being honest with yourself and others. It comes from keeping promises you make to yourself. It comes from treating yourself with the same kindness you show to people you care about. When you know who you are and what you stand for, other people's opinions become interesting but irrelevant. When you respect yourself, you don't need others to respect you to feel valuable. When you approve of yourself, you don't require external approval to feel confident. But let me ask you this. Whose opinion of you matters more than your own? Whose approval do you need more than your own approval? Whose respect is more important than your self-respect? The answer should be no one's. Because you're the only person who has to live with yourself every moment of every day. You're the only person whose opinion of you affects every decision you make, every risk you take, every dream you pursue. Stop outsourcing your self-worth to people who don't understand your journey. Stop giving strangers the power to determine your value. Stop making your confidence dependent on variables you can't control. Build your worth on solid ground, on your character, your integrity, your commitment to growth, your willingness to be authentic even when it's difficult. Build it on your resilience, your compassion, your courage to keep trying despite setbacks. These are the foundations that cannot be shaken by criticism, cannot be diminished by failure, cannot be stolen by rejection. These are the pillars of unshakable self-worth. You don't need anyone's permission to value yourself. You don't need anyone's approval to respect yourself. You don't need anyone's validation to know that you matter. Stand tall. Stand alone if necessary. Stand on the unshakable foundation of your own worth, because that's where true confidence begins. Not all feedback deserves your reaction. Learn to filter criticism with calm logic and never lose your center. Criticism feels like an attack because you've made it personal. Someone questions your idea, and you hear them questioning your intelligence. Someone disagrees with your approach, and you hear them dismissing your worth. Someone offers feedback, and you hear them delivering a verdict on your entire being. But criticism is not personal assassination, it's just information. And like all information, some of it is valuable, some of it is irrelevant, and some of it is completely wrong. Your job is not to accept all criticism. Your job is not to reject all criticism. Your job is to evaluate criticism with the same calm logic you'd use to evaluate any other piece of information. Ask yourself, is this person qualified to give this feedback? Do they understand the full context? Are they speaking from experience or assumption? Are they trying to help or hurt? Are they addressing your actions or attacking your character? Not all critics are created equal. The opinion of someone who knows you, understands your goals, and wants to see you succeed carries more weight than the random judgment of a stranger. The feedback of someone with expertise in the relevant area matters more than the casual comment of someone who doesn't understand what you're trying to accomplish. But here's what happens when you learn to filter criticism effectively. You become unshakable. You can receive feedback without being devastated by it. You can consider different perspectives without losing your own. You can learn from valid criticism without being destroyed by invalid attacks. The people who criticize you are not your enemies. Most of them are just people with opinions, sharing their thoughts based on their limited perspective. Some are trying to help, some are projecting their own insecurities, some are simply making conversation. Very few are actually trying to wound you. When someone criticizes you, pause before reacting. Take a breath. Consider the source. Evaluate the content. Is there truth in what they're saying? Is there something you can learn? Is there an adjustment you should make? If yes, say thank you and use the information to improve. If no, say thank you anyway and discard the information that doesn't serve you. But let me ask you this. Why does criticism sting so much? Usually it's because part of you fears it might be true. The criticism that hurts most is often the criticism that touches on your own doubts about yourself. This is actually useful information. Your emotional reaction to criticism can tell you where your insecurities lie, where you need to build more confidence, where you need to develop more skill or knowledge. Use criticism as a mirror, not a weapon. Let it show you what you might need to work on, but don't let it define what you're worth. Remember, you are not your work. You are not your ideas. You are not your performance. When someone criticizes these things, they're not criticizing your fundamental worth as a human being. They're commenting on specific actions or outputs that can be improved, changed, or simply left as they are. The most confident people you know receive criticism regularly. They receive it because they're putting themselves out there, taking risks, sharing their ideas, making things happen. The alternative to receiving criticism is doing nothing worth criticizing. Develop thick skin, but keep a soft heart. Become resilient to attacks, but remain open to growth. Learn to distinguish between feedback that serves you and feedback that doesn't. Your composure in the face of criticism is a superpower. It allows you to learn without being crushed, to grow without being discouraged, to continue creating despite the inevitable opinions of others. Stay centered. Stay calm. Stay focused on what you're building, not on what others are saying about it. You don't need better stories. You need better ears. This chapter shows how deep listening builds real influence. You've been approaching conversations all wrong. You think connection comes from being impressive, so you prepare your best stories. You think influence comes from being interesting, so you rehearse your cleverest observations. You think relationships are built on what you say, so you focus all your energy on speaking brilliantly. But the most influential people in your life aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who listen the best. Real listening is rare. Most people are not listening to understand. They're listening to respond. They're waiting for their turn to speak, mentally preparing their next comment while you're still talking. They hear your words, but they miss your meaning. They catch your facts, but they miss your feelings. You can be different. You can be the person who actually hears what others are saying. You can be the person who makes others feel truly seen and understood. You can be the person who asks the questions no one else thinks to ask. When you listen, really listen, something magical happens. The other person feels valued. They feel important. They feel like their thoughts and experiences matter, and in return, they value you. They find you important. They want to be around you more. This isn't manipulation. This is genuine human connection. People don't remember what you said as much as they remember how you made them feel. And nothing makes people feel better than being truly heard. But here's what most people don't understand about listening. It's not passive. It's not just staying quiet while someone else talks. Real listening is active, engaged, generous. It requires your full attention, your genuine curiosity, your authentic interest in understanding another person's perspective. Ask questions that show you're paying attention. What was that like for you? How did you feel when that happened? What did you learn from that experience? These aren't just conversation fillers, they're invitations for deeper connection. Remember details from previous conversations. Follow up on things people have shared with you. Show that what they said mattered enough for you to remember it. This simple act of remembering makes people feel significant. Listen for emotions, not just facts. When someone tells you about their day, they're not just sharing information, they're sharing how they felt about what happened. Respond to both the content and the emotion. That sounds frustrating, or you must have been so proud, or I can hear the excitement in your voice. But let me ask you this. When was the last time someone really listened to you, not just waited for their turn to talk, but actually absorbed what you were saying, asked thoughtful questions, showed genuine interest in your thoughts and feelings? How did that make you feel about that person? That's the power you have when you choose to listen deeply. That's the influence you gain when you make others feel heard. That's the connection you create when you focus on understanding instead of impressing. Stop trying to be the most interesting person in the room. Start being the most interested person in the room. Stop preparing brilliant responses. Start asking brilliant questions. Stop performing for attention. Start paying attention. The conversation is not about you proving your worth. It's about you discovering theirs. Every person has a story worth hearing, experiences worth understanding, perspectives worth exploring. Your job is not to compete with their story. It's to honor it with your attention. Listen with your whole being. Listen to understand, not to judge. Listen to connect, not to correct. Listen to learn, not to lecture. Because in a world full of people desperate to be heard, the person who truly listens becomes unforgettable. Confidence isn't spontaneous. It's trained. Repetition rewires the mind. And this chapter lays out the plan. You think confident people were born that way. You think social ease is a natural talent, like perfect pitch or artistic ability. You think some people just have it, and others don't. You think you're either gifted with charisma or doomed to awkwardness. You're wrong about all of it. Confidence is a skill. Social ease is a practiced ability. Charisma is learned behavior. And like any skill, it improves with deliberate practice, focused repetition, and consistent effort. You wouldn't expect to play piano beautifully without practice. You wouldn't expect to speak a foreign language fluently without repetition. You wouldn't expect to master any complex skill without dedicated effort. Yet somehow you expect social confidence to appear magically without any training. The people you think are naturally confident have simply practiced confidence more than you have. They've put themselves in more social situations. They've had more conversations. They've faced more rejection, handled more criticism, navigated more awkward moments. They're not naturally gifted, they're well practiced. But here's the good news. Practice works. Every time you speak up when you want to stay silent, you're building confidence. Every time you make eye contact when you want to look away, you're strengthening social muscle. Every time you start a conversation when you want to avoid one, you're becoming more socially powerful. Your brain rewires itself based on what you do most often. If you consistently avoid social challenges, your brain strengthens the pathways associated with avoidance. If you consistently face social challenges, your brain strengthens the pathways associated with courage. Neuroplasticity means your brain can change at any age. The social anxiety you feel today is not permanent. The confidence you lack right now can be developed. The ease you admire in others can become your own reality through consistent practice. Start small. Don't try to become a social butterfly overnight. Begin with low-stakes situations where the pressure is minimal. Practice. Making small talk with cashiers. Practice asking questions in safe environments. Practice speaking up in situations where the consequences are negligible. Each small success builds evidence that you can handle social situations. Each positive interaction proves that people are generally decent. Each moment of connection shows that you're more capable than you believed. But here's what most people don't understand about practice. It has to be progressive. You can't get stronger by repeating the same easy exercises. You have to gradually increase the difficulty. You have to continuously challenge yourself with slightly more demanding situations. If you're comfortable talking to one person, practice talking to two. If you can handle casual conversations, try discussing more serious topics. If you can speak up in small groups, challenge yourself in larger ones. Always be pushing just beyond your current comfort zone. Practice doesn't just make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Whatever you practice most consistently becomes your default behavior. If you practice confidence, confidence becomes your natural state. If you practice avoidance, avoidance becomes your automatic response. But let me ask you this. What would your life look like if you practiced social confidence as deliberately as athletes practice their sports? What would change if you approached every social situation as a training opportunity rather than a test? You would transform, not overnight, but inevitably. Not magically, but methodically. Not through luck, but through effort. Set up practice sessions. Put yourself in social situations specifically to build skills, not just to achieve outcomes. View every conversation as training. Treat every interaction as an opportunity to improve. The confident person you want to become is waiting on the other side of consistent practice. Every day you practice, you get closer. Every day you avoid practice, you stay stuck. Practice makes powerful. Start practicing. You're not the shy one. You're just rehearsing the wrong role. Time to rewrite the story you tell yourself and believe it. You've been playing the same character for so long that you think it's who you really are. I'm just not a people person. I'm naturally introverted. I've always been the quiet one. I'm not good at socializing. You've repeated these lines so many times that they've become your identity. But these aren't facts about you. They're stories you've chosen to believe. And stories can be rewritten. Your identity is not fixed. It's not determined by your past behavior or your current limitations. It's not locked in by your childhood experiences or your genetic makeup. Your identity is a choice you make every single day through your actions and your self-talk. Every time you say, "I'm not a social person," you reinforce that identity. Every time you think, "I'm just awkward," you strengthen that self-image. Every time you tell yourself, "I don't belong in social situations," you make that story more real. But what if you change the story? What if instead of, "I'm not good at socializing," you said, "I'm learning to be better at socializing"? What if instead of, "I'm naturally shy," you said, "I'm naturally thoughtful"? What if instead of, "I don't belong," you said, "I'm finding where I belong"? These aren't lies. These are choices. Choices about how you interpret your experiences, how you frame your journey, how you see your potential. The most powerful transformation happens when you stop identifying with your limitations and start identifying with your growth. When you stop being the person who can't and start being the person who's learning how. When you stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as evolving, your past behavior doesn't predict your future behavior unless you let it. The fact that you were quiet in school doesn't mean you have to be quiet forever. The fact that you struggled socially in the past doesn't mean you can't thrive socially in the future. The fact that you've been practicing anxiety doesn't mean you can't learn to practice confidence. But here's what most people don't understand about identity change. It starts with action, not belief. You don't wait until you feel confident to act confident. You act confident until you become confident. You don't wait until you feel social to be social. You practice being social until it becomes natural. Your identity follows your actions. When you consistently act like a confident person, you become a confident person. When you repeatedly choose courage over comfort, you become a courageous person. When you practice connection instead of avoidance, you become a connected person. Every action is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Every time you speak up, you're voting for the identity of someone who speaks up. Every time you make eye contact, you're voting for the identity of someone who connects. Every time you start a conversation, you're voting for the identity of someone who reaches out. Stop voting for the identity that limits you. Start voting for the identity that empowers you. But let me ask you this. Who would you be if you weren't the shy one? Who would you become if you weren't limited by your old story? What would you do differently if you saw yourself as someone who was naturally confident and socially capable? Start acting like that person. Start making the choices that person would make. Start speaking the way that person would speak. Start showing up the way that person would show up. You are not your past. You are not your fears. You are not your limitations. You are your potential waiting to be actualized through your choices. Rewrite your story. Choose a new identity. Become who you were meant to be. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action in the presence of it. This final chapter dares you to show up anyway. Your hands might shake. Your voice might quiver. Your heart might race like a drumbeat before battle. And you're going to show up anyway, because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else is more important than fear. You've been waiting for the fear to disappear before you act. You've been hoping for the day when social situations feel easy, when confidence comes naturally, when you don't feel nervous anymore. But that day isn't coming. Not because you're broken, but because that's not how courage works. Brave people feel afraid. Heroes experience doubt. Confident people get nervous. The difference between them and everyone else is not what they feel. It's what they do despite what they feel. You think you need to feel brave to be brave. You think you need to feel confident to act confident. You think you need to feel comfortable to step outside your comfort zone. But the opposite is true. You act brave until you feel brave. You practice confidence until it becomes real. You step into discomfort until comfort expands to meet you. Living loud doesn't mean being the loudest person in the room. It means being fully present in your own life. It means speaking your truth, even when your voice shakes. It means showing up as yourself, even when yourself feels vulnerable. It means choosing connection over comfort, growth over safety, authenticity over approval. The world needs what you have to offer, not the polished, perfect version of yourself that you think you need to become. The real you, the messy, uncertain, beautifully human you. The you that has thoughts worth sharing, perspectives worth hearing, contributions worth making. But here's what most people don't understand about living boldly. It's not about being fearless. It's about being fearful and acting anyway. It's about feeling the tremor in your hands and reaching out regardless. It's about hearing the quiver in your voice and speaking up despite it. Your fear is not evidence that you shouldn't act. Your fear is evidence that what you're about to do matters. Your nervousness is not a sign of weakness. Your nervousness is a sign that you're pushing beyond your current limits, growing beyond your current capacity, becoming more than you currently are. Every time you act despite fear, you prove to yourself that fear is not fatal. Every time you speak despite nervousness, you demonstrate that nervousness is not permanent. Every time you connect despite anxiety, you show yourself that anxiety is not all-powerful. You are more resilient than you know. You are stronger than you think. You are braver than you believe. And you're about to prove it by showing up fully in your own life. Stop waiting for permission that will never come. Stop waiting for certainty that doesn't exist. Stop waiting for the fear to disappear. That never will. Start living now. Start speaking now. Start connecting now. The conversations you avoid today are the connections you lose forever. The risks you don't take now are the opportunities you forfeit permanently. The person you don't become today is the life you don't get to live. Live loud. Even if you shake, even if you stumble, even if you're terrified. Because the alternative, living small, staying silent, playing it safe, isn't really living at all. You already have what it takes. Now go prove it. The world is waiting for you to stop hiding and start shining. Stop rehearsing and start performing. Stop preparing for life and start living it. Your time is now. Your moment is here. Your opportunity is knocking. Answer boldly.